Hello, hey. Welcome back to another episode of Grace and Roses. I'm your host, Keisha Holden. I'm so grateful that you decided to join me today. I've been extremely busy. Life has been lifing. I've been traveling so much for work. I've taken on a new project working with my sister with her bridal design company called Danny Simone Couture. And then there's another little spin-off business, not little, we're not going to put anything little in front of what we're doing, but there's a spin-off business that has developed, and I will share more about that later once I get all of the details taken care of. But I've been to Chicago. I've literally been traveling ever since 2024 hit, and it hasn't been a full week that I've been in my own bed. So all that to say, I've neglected putting together all of my episodes and making them automated and having them automatically post to YouTube. So I've kind of fallen behind a little bit on the episodes. And so for that, I apologize, but I do want to get on a better routine so that way we're not missing any weeks going by, because I understand the impact that Grace and Roses is having on you guys and having on the new audience that's pretty new to my channel. So I want to definitely make sure that I stay on top of automating these episodes so you get what you need, and because self-love is very important, and so I want to make sure that we stay on target, right? And it helps me to stay accountable. Anyways, I've been thinking a lot about, especially when I was in Chicago, I was thinking a lot about Heartbreak. And the reason why that came up was because it came up on the year anniversary of the most tumultuous part of my life last year. And I never fully talked about it. I touched a little bit on it from my book. And if you don't have it, it's called The Beauty in the Wait: Experiencing God's Goodness in Your Season of Singleness. And it's always available on Amazon.com. Just search my name. I do have a link in the description so you can find it. But I was thinking about, I'm always celebrating milestones, right? And always celebrating things that I've, good or bad, things that I've been through and what got me to this point. And even though that season was extremely difficult and I didn't think I was going to make it through it, I am grateful that I made it through, first of all. But the second part of it is, if it hadn't been for that season, I wouldn't be here. And what came out of that season, that particular season gave birth to The Beauty in the Wait. And it also gave birth to Grace and Roses, which you're experiencing now. And it also gave birth to my insecurity being gone, right? And sharing my victories out loud. What I want to talk about today is embracing heartbreak. And so just sharing a bit of what I went through last year. Someone that I trusted and loved from a friendship standpoint, we decided that we were going to explore, well, he approached and we decided we we're going to explore moving forward in a relationship. And little by little, I just started seeing red flags that were very, very hard to ignore. And it came to a point where I said, you know what, Lord, I prayed all the way through it, but I made a final prayer, God, I need you to hear me on this, right? And it came down to, God, if this person doesn't have my best intentions at heart, remove them. And with that finality and in my spirit, I was willing to receive whatever happened after it. It was almost as if God said, say less. And little by little, things just started to fall apart. And even before that, I was telling one of my brothers, whom I love so dearly, and it's important to have people who have no motives with you. Like, my brother is married, he has children, there are no motives in between us. His only motive is that he loves me and wants to see me succeed. And so it's important to have these people in your life who have nothing to gain. They also have nothing to lose. All they want is to see you succeed and move forward and be happy. And they want to see you blessed. So I remember telling him one day, pray for me. I'm seeing somebody. I think this might be the one. And he looked at me and he said, okay, I'll pray. And something that he and I talked about, he asked the question. And I won't go into particulars what that question was, but I had to think in my mind, like, yeah, this person doesn't match up with what you and I talked about, right? And so knowing that he was going to also pray, it was almost as if I was confirming that I know that this person is not right for me. So I had to get it out in order to find out, is God in this, or if this is just me being a hopeful romantic and finally wanted to be with the person I'm supposed to be with, right? With the love of my life. And so we move forward. And I said that prayer, and the Lord, that's probably the quickest prayer that God will answer, right? Especially when you're willing to receive it. And so I prayed that prayer. If he's not the one, if he doesn't mean well for me, if he doesn't have the best intentions in mind, then move him out of the way. And almost immediately I felt that God moved this person out of the way. And it happened in such a horrible way. And I remember God saying, this is going to hurt, but I'm going to carry you through it. And I get emotional about it because I've felt the goodness of God my entire life, but I've never felt his goodness like that. And so to audibly hear him say, my baby, this is going to hurt, but I'm going to carry you through it. And to physically feel his arms wrapped around me is something that I will never regret in that season. And so moving forward, the way everything happened, not only was I mourning, it was like a grieving period for me, right? Because not only was I mourning the friendship that was over, but I was also mourning the romantic relationship that never happened. And the last time we had a conversation about forgiveness, we touched a little bit on radical acceptance, right? And so we're going to go through some things later on in the video in regards to radical acceptance. This is more or less me giving to you what God had given to me in that season, right? So this is a physical hug for anyone who has experienced heartbreak or who may be going through heartbreak right now. And yes, it was a year ago for me, but yes, it was a year ago for me. And sometimes those feelings come up and I get a bit emotional about it. But the emotion that I feel now is not the sadness that I felt in the past, or the sadness that I felt a year ago, or the grief that I felt a year ago. The emotion that I experience now is more so like, if it had not been for the Lord carrying me through that season, I literally would not be sitting here today. I cried for 3 weeks straight. So legit, like 21 days straight, I cried every single day. I felt like I knew when I looked in the mirror, my light had gone out. So it's important for me to express to you, never let someone dull your shine, right? The heartbreak is going to come. The offense is going to come. The separation is going to come. The anxiety, the depression, all of the things are going to come. You're going to have to feel your feelings. You're going to have to walk through it. I remember feeling like I had started doing all of this work to heal from past trauma, to heal from things that happened in my childhood. And I remember being like, man, I'm doing all of this work And here comes this person trying to tear all of that down. So if you've ever seen the original Color Purple, and remember when Celia arrived to Mister's house and she got up the next day, she's got the bandage on her head, and she gets up with her bucket of soap and water, her wash rags, and she walks into the kitchen. The kitchen is disgusting, and she starts cleaning up. And then in the next scene, you see there's a fire in the fireplace. The dishes are clean. She's sitting down. She's combing hair. It's like night and day. And then the next part, Mr. comes with his dirty boots, and he plops his dirty boot right on top of the clean dishes that she had set aside and organized and made beautiful. And every time I think about what I had gone through, that's the scenario that plays in my mind. Like, I've spent all this time and money seeking therapy and doing the work, and then here comes this person putting their dirty boot on top of the cleanliness that I've started, this journey that I'm starting. And that was meant to make me bitter. That was meant to make me give up. That was meant to make me throw in the towel and throw my hands in the air and say, it's not worth it. Because it was so early in the stages of being in therapy and actively taking my mental and emotional health seriously. And so when I say embrace heartbreak, yes, the heartbreak is hurtful, right? There's no other way to say it. It feels like the end of the world. But here's the hug and here's the blessing in it. It is not to make you bitter, but it's meant to make you better. It sounds like a cliche, but when you embrace it, like, I'm gonna come out. When you embrace the heartbreak with the mindset of, I'm gonna come out of this better than what I went in, it puts a different spin on things for you, right? It's easier said than done when you're in it. Trust me, I know. But there has to be another side. There has to be an after this moment. There has to be a moment where you say, this is not going to break me. My moment came when I said, no, this is not going to break me, and I'm going to love even more from here on out. And I've learned who I am. I've discovered, at the time, I had discovered that I was just fitting a mold of the person that I thought I needed to be with. And so that gave birth to a whole different set of self-love and self-care and rediscovering who Keisha is, what Keisha likes, what Keisha doesn't like. My standards have changed. My boundaries are stronger. So when we say embrace heartbreak, embrace the new you that's going to come out of what you're in or what you've already gone through. Going back to forgiveness, just because it doesn't affect you the way it did in the past, it doesn't mean that you're completely over it. It doesn't mean that you've forgiven. You've just kind of moved it into a closet, but you have to yank that stuff out. Go back to our movie, 27 Dresses, right? Get that stuff out so you can move forward. And so when you are embracing heartbreak, you find out who you are. And most importantly, if you are a believer, you find out who God is in it, right? Tone wrote a song a long time ago. Y'all remember Tone, right? He's B. Slade now. But he wrote a song and performed a song a long time ago called Personal Jesus. And I'm a worship leader. So it's fairly hard as a worship leader to sing about God being a healer if you've never been healed. It's really hard to sing about God being a way maker if a way hasn't been made or if you haven't been involved in a situation where you need a way out. It's very hard to sing about God being a heart fixer if you haven't been in a situation where your heart has been broken. It's very hard to sing about God, who is a mind regulator, if you haven't been in a state of confusion and mental duress. So these are things that we have to go through. David said it like this: it was good for me that I was afflicted, because now I know who you are, right? You're my personal Jesus. You're my personal Savior. You mean so much. You're my everything, right? When I say, God, you're my everything, I get so emotional. I'm not going to sit here crying through this whole thing, okay? But when I talk about God being my everything, I get turned out, because he literally is my everything. I told y'all there's going to be some tears. We're going to laugh, we're going to cry, but we're going to be our best selves. Heartbreak definitely stings. And I don't want to take your feelings away from you. You have to feel the feelings. It stings. It leaves you confused. It leaves you questioning everything you thought you knew. But heartbreak, even though it's painful, it can also be a powerful catalyst into your best self. And this is what this conversation is about. If I didn't go through what I went through, this love that I have for myself, to be able to just even look in the mirror and say, girl, you are so fine. To look at pictures and to see myself now, I look completely different than what I looked then. I could see in my eyes when I was going through the heartbreak. I was posting selfies and I was smiling, but it wasn't real. I would put the camera down and cry my eyes out. And I could see the pain in my eyes. I could see the pain that was hiding behind a facade of a smile. So yeah, I remember taking all these selfies, and I could see the pain in my eyes when I would look at the camera, or I would see the pain in my eyes when I was looking at the pictures. And that's when I determined I'm not going to let this get the best of me. And so my prayer at that point wasn't simply, God, get me out of this, or God, carry me through, because he promised that he was going to carry me through. And he was. Like, I could physically feel him carrying me. But the prayer turned into, Lord, I need to know who you are. Hide me in you. Show me your love for me. And show me how to love me. And leaning deeply into his grace. And that's what shifted everything. That's when the shift happened. It was almost like, I need you to be in this storm, because I need you to see me through all of this rain, through all of your tears. I need you to see me in this, right? Like when the disciples were on the boat and they're in the middle of a storm and they can see Jesus walking on the water coming toward them. And the question was, Lord, if that's you, bid me to come to you. And that was my prayer. That was my get out of the boat moment, right? Where I could just walk out on the water and greet Jesus in the middle of that storm, and greet him in the middle of all my grief, in the middle of all of my pain. He met me in the midst of the storm. And so out of the heartbreak came wisdom, right? Wisdom to see what not to walk into next. If I hadn't gone through what I went through, like my first therapist, Cassandra, shared with me, now it's awareness, right? Now your discernment becomes different. Now you can see things that you weren't able to see before. Your spiritual eyes are now wide open, because when that thing comes, when it tries to come back to you again, now you know the escape routes. Now you see the exit signs. Now you have an exit strategy. Now you can say, okay, I don't feel right in this. This feels familiar, and that's not a good thing. You should never walk into anything familiar. You should only be walking into things, situations, circumstances, relationships where you feel safe and where you feel the peace of God. Okay? That's just a little tidbit for you. Now, if you are going through heartbreak at the moment, I want you to know that you are not alone. Obviously, you're not alone, right? There's so much grace and obviously so many roses that have come out of this season. Just take care of yourself, embrace the heartbreak, and know that you're going to come out on the other side of it. Like I promised, I wanted to touch more on radical acceptance, right? So just as a reminder, radical acceptance, and I'm looking at my phone because I have some notes over here, so I'm not like rambling like I have been. So radical acceptance is accepting your reality in situations that are not in your control. Okay. Practicing radical acceptance has been shown to reduce feelings of shame, guilt, and anxiety. And when you're in, let's say, a romantic situation where someone is love bombing you, and they're like future feeding you, like, oh, we have a future together, this is blah, blah, blah. That was my situation. And then you start to marry the future, all the while there's nothing really going on in the reality that matches up with what's being fed to you for the future, right? Radical acceptance helps you to let go of that and helps you to live in the now and live in the reality. So that way, if things go awry, you don't have that feeling of guilt. You don't have that feeling of shame. That's what I went through. I felt guilty, like I'm going through this situation with this person. They gave me all the future and all of this, and now I feel shameful, but I didn't do it to me, right? I felt guilty because it didn't go the way I had hoped it would, or it didn't go the way that this person fed to me. And it was just a tactic to knock me off of my game. And they always say the counterfeit comes before the real thing. So imagine falling for the counterfeit. Then you miss what God really has for you. So sometimes you have to go through these things just so God can grow you up, right? Because I had been praying like, God, I was saying I need to grow up. And I know that I'm a mature person, but there were certain things that I knew I needed to grow up on, like emotionally, and growing up in my discernment, growing up in my wisdom, growing up in understanding, and avoiding the red flags. We can't avoid red flags, but when you see them, you need an exit strategy. Leave at the very first sign of disrespect. And that's what I had to learn in that season. So let's talk about some radical acceptance exercises, okay? So you'll see me a lot if you know me personally and if we've spent time together one-on-one or in a personal situation. Deep breathing is my jam. I will take a minute and just breathe. And even when I'm having a hard time sleeping, I will close my eyes and just focus my mind and my ears on the sound of my breath. That helps me to calm down, and it also helps me, especially in the sleep situation, it helps me to go right to sleep. So focus on your breath and remain present. The next thing is practice mindfulness by examining your thoughts and separating yourself from them. Last year, I was diagnosed with adjustment disorder with anxiety, obviously depression as well, but that was the main thing. And so mindfulness, examining my thoughts and separating myself from them, that's one of the tools that I use to ask myself questions. Why are you feeling this way? Why are you anxious right now? Let's separate your thoughts. Why are you feeling like this? Right? And literally, I will stop, especially if I'm home by myself, I will stop and ask myself the question, why do you feel like this? And 9 times out of 10, it's because I need a nap or I'm hungry. And not to make small of it, but sometimes we could go into irrational thinking, irrational thoughts, because we're not examining why we're feeling the way we're feeling. So if you are someone like me who suffers from, I don't suffer from it anymore. I don't receive that. But if you're someone who experiences anxiety, I will encourage you to examine your thoughts. Take a moment, quiet yourself. Why am I feeling this way in this moment? What's causing this? I don't like to use the word trigger. I'll use the word activate. What is activating this anxiety that I'm feeling? And so that's where you will find yourself going into a better place, right? So let's move on because I don't want to hold you for too much longer. Examine your expectations. Where or are they realistic? Did they set you up for disappointment or lead you to be in unreasonable fear? Right? Sometimes our expectations can be so super high, especially if you are a hopeful romantic. You will find yourself future faking on yourself too, right? So don't future fake on yourself. Don't do that. Be realistic. These are my expectations. Have you expressed those expectations to the person that you're talking to or the job that you're in? If the expectation is too high, you have to examine those, okay? Lastly, we always talk about feeling your feelings, right? So going back to being anxious, if you're having an anxious moment, feel the feelings. Okay, even if you have to say it out loud, I'm feeling anxious because. Acknowledge those feelings. Once you acknowledge them, then you can work on pulling yourself back from it and going through those other exercises where you're deep breathing, where you're going through mindfulness, where you're asking the question, why am I feeling this way, right? So that way you can talk yourself off of the proverbial ledge. You can get yourself out of those anxious situations, calm yourself, self-soothing. This is all about self-soothing. And also, obviously, giving yourself grace and celebrating those wins. So when you've come out of the situation, make sure you celebrate yourself in it. I was expressing to my therapist the other day, and I was like, I'm really proud of myself because I'm practicing all of these self-soothing tools, knowing that I experience anxiety in certain areas in certain seasons, and using the tools that are in my arsenal, things that I've learned through therapy and things that I've learned through research, reading my Bible, praying, seeking God first thing in the morning. Like, I'm not on social media first thing in the morning. I'm seeking God, going through my devotionals and all of that, and listening to what he has to say. One of my favorite pastimes is watching really good preaching on YouTube, because I just love to hear how God speaks to other people. 9 times out of 10, I'm going to hear something, and something's going to feed my soul that I need in that moment, either for that moment or in the future. So there are things that you have to do in order to embrace the new you. Embrace heartbreak. Embrace the person you're going to be after this. Okay? Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you stopping by. It's a kind of a longer video, but I think it's worth it. Like I said, I will get better in being automated, so we're set on a schedule. We started our videos at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday, but I feel like I want to shift it and make it a little later, so around 6 or 7 p.m. So that way you guys have time to watch it when you're not so busy, because like during the day, right in the middle of the day, seems like might not be the best course of action for us. But let me know what time works best for you. I'm on the East Coast, so if you're in another time zone, share that time zone with me. We'll try to figure something out so we're all learning and we're all embracing self-love together. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share. If you are looking for resources, if you want me and my peoples to pray for you, reach out to me at www.keishaholden.com. Subscribe to the newsletter so that way we know you're listening. You can even put your prayer down below if you'd like. Either way, just reach out if you need additional support. I'm here to support you. This is just a resource, a way of supporting you. We're all in this together. I will never say that you are alone. No, I will never, ever, ever, ever say that. We're all going through something. And we've all been through some things. And I think that's why we're all here. So yeah, ramble's over. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Let's be friends. Let's be a community. And don't forget to give yourself grace and roses.